Hello, my name is Jason SCHLEY of SCHLEY'S Bonsai Supplies, and today we're going to talk about air layering. This is a native hornbeam. This was collected over 20 years ago right here down the road, maybe 50 miles from DeLand, Florida. It's been in bonsai training all that time. I've been working these branches for about 12 years. I had cut it to a line, began styling them, and in that time I've just grown to really love hornbeams. I have been letting this top grow all that time specifically to thicken this transition from here to the original collected trunk. At this point, it's time to bring this down and regrow a new top. Hornbeams are apically dominant like most trees. So this, as you can kind of see in the video, is much thicker than some of these lower branches. So I'm going to take this off specifically to create taper on this length right here, because from here to the bottom there's no taper. Leaving this foliage on here and leaving the vigor up top, when I put the air layer on, which we're going to end up putting this air layer right here, it's going to keep the sap flowing vigorously up here. They're going to create starches and sugars, and it's going to come back down and it's going to be stopped where I put the air layer. So leaving a lot of extra foliage above your air layer is an excellent way to create roots faster. The more foliage you have up above your air layer, the better. Once you take the air layer off, you cut the top pretty hard to lessen the stress on the root ball, and you put it in a pot and let it recover for a year or two before you really do too much more work other than organizing the roots. The reason why we air layer is because you can air layer older wood. This is 12 years old. You can air layer older wood, so it saves you 12 years of growing from a little cutting or seed. Also, the main reason I like the air layer is because when I put the air layer on, I get a much better radial root ball. It's much more attractive. And it's the only way we can really get a piece of wood this big to grow reliably. Potentially, you could do this as a cutting, but it's really difficult. You have to have an intermittent mist system. The chance of failure is pretty high. Whereas you put an air layer on it, and if it doesn't air layer, and instead of it issuing roots, it calluses over and reconnects, you just try it again the following year. Hornbeams air layer very well, as long as it's not really old wood like this. I'd be surprised if this didn't take, to be honest. So let me get started. Typically when we do an air layer, wherever I do the top cut, that's going to kind of be where the roots are all going to issue from. And you can change the attitude of the future nabari by just changing the attitude of your blade. I like to go straight across, especially with this type of tree that's going to be just a standard informal upright. The thickness of the trunk that you're going to air layer is typically the thickness of the girdling you're going to do on the wood. So I'm going to cut. Basically I'm ringing it all the way across. If I were to ring it and then not put the rooting hormone and the sphagnum, more than likely the top would die. But keeping the sphagnum on there, keeping the moisture in there so the sapwood can continue to flow up to the leaves, it will be fine. Some of the things you want to do for maintenance after you put an air layer is you want to check the sphagnum. Every once in a while it'll dry out, and if it dries out completely, the whole top can die. You can see that because the nights are above 50 degrees and the tree is growing very vigorously, the sap is flowing really well, that this actually pops off pretty easily. So that's basically a cut girdle all the way around the tree. The next thing I do is I put some rooting hormone on the top section of where I want the roots to issue. Put it all the way across. If you don't want to put your fingers in the rooting hormone, you can use a brush. That's not a problem. I like to use aluminum foil for my air layers. It keeps the sunlight out. It's easy to manipulate. What I typically do is I get a piece and then I fold it a little bit. On both sides. I like to put the aluminum foil bright piece in, the dull piece out, and the main reason why is the bright actually seems to attract birds. And there's been a few times when birds have come in here and actually used them for their nests out here. The dull stuff doesn't seem to attract them as much, although it's not much difference, but for some reason it doesn't seem to attract them as much, and I don't have them pulled off the tree. The next thing is some sphagnum moss that was previously soaking in a rooting hormone solution like KLN. Sphagnum moss by itself also incites roots, and it has fungicidal properties, which is why I use sphagnum. Some people actually put a pot and they'll just put soil or bonsai soil in there and they'll wire the pot, and that's fine too. That's another way to do it. I like this because it's a little bit more no muss, no fuss. I wrap the sphagnum moss around, all the way around the cut, and then I put the aluminum foil. Because this tree is in active growth, it's creating a lot of starches and sugars. We should probably start to see roots in 3 to 4 months. If this were a Brazilian rain tree, you would have roots in like a month. I would start to see them. When I put the sphagnum moss around the tree, I do kind of squeeze out the excess so it's not super wet. You don't want it soaking wet. You can easily undo this every few months just to check for roots. I don't like to take it off until it's pretty full of roots all the way around. That's the other reason why I like using this is roots grow in absence of light, and so many people put the plastic on there and the roots will start to grow into the plastic, but as soon as sunlight hits, they grow back in, and they just don't seem to grow as well. Whereas with this, it's absence of light, and I seem to get less calcium and more actual roots on this. Once I do cut this off, I'll come in here and I'll cut this back, kind of like where that aluminum foil is placed right there, to eliminate that reverse taper that was kind of hidden in there. So there'll be a little piece here that we'll end up eliminating and we won't use at all. But this tree really has great movement and a lot of nice branches and a lot of personality in here. And this will end up being a superb littler tree. You can see with even the minimal amount of trimming that we've done here, how small these leaves have gotten. With work, they'll even get much smaller knots. So this is actually a decent size for a hornbeam. Because these are apically dominant, once I wire this up and grow it on, literally in 2 or 3 seasons it'll appear as full as this. However, we'll have a little bit of gradual taper coming from this section to here. So you can kind of see it right there, the new tree. Okay? Thanks guys for watching. Appreciate it. If you have any questions, please put it in the comments below. Thank you very much.